Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Sneha Koshy. So, is India looking at sweeping reforms or dilution and undermining of its education quality? The new draft UGC rules have sparked a massive row, not just a political one, but also among academicians. Rahul Gandhi and Akhilesh joined the protests led by DMK in the national capital today over the draft UGC guidelines that has witnessed strong pushback from the opposition ruled states. The opposition has alleged attempts by the BJP-led centre to centralise powers against what they call the ethos of the federal principles of this country. In fact, the protests come just a day after the resolution signed by 6 opposition-ruled states, including Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, to name a few, against the draft UGC resolutions. In fact, among the controversial aspects of the draft UGC rules, there are several, including appointments, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, let's listen in to the political reactions.
Aim of the RSS is the eradication of all other histories, all other cultures, all other traditions in this country. That is their starting point, and that is what they want to achieve. This attempt that they're doing with the education system of the different states, this is just another attempt to push their agenda. Each state has its tradition, each state has its history, each state has its language, and that is why I keep saying that in the Constitution, India is called a union of states.
उन्होंने प्रधानमंत्री जी अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी ने कहा था, if you keep supporting industrialists, one day will come then you will become the servant of industrialists. और मुझे लगता है कि जो नई एजुकेशन पॉलिसी आई है, ये कहीं न कहीं उद्योगपतियों के सामने और उद्योगपतियों को यूनिवर्सिटी देने की साजिश चल रही है। जो बड़ी बड़ी यूनिवर्सिटियां बनी हैं, we can never agree on that. We can never support new education policy.
Well, in fact, among the controversial aspects of the draft UGC rules also include appointment of non-academics as vice-chancellors of universities. That's right, non-academics or non-academicians, allowing for far more discretionary powers that critics allege dilutes not just the appraisal process, but also the education system. In fact, the new UGC rules don't require specialization in core subjects to teach in higher educational institutions. The draft rules are seen as an attempt to align higher educational institutions with the national education policy. So, is this about flexibility, inclusivity, and innovation, or undermining the quality of higher education and the federal principles of the country? Joining me right now to take this debate forward in the studio, Professor Tanvir Aeijaz. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm also going to be joined at this point by G.S. Prashant, who's a spokesperson for BJP, A. Sarvanan, who's a spokesperson for DMK, and I'm shortly going to be joined by Rajesh Jasyal, who's an educationist. Well, let me start straight with you, Professor Tanvir Aeijaz, as somebody who's very closely associated with the academic world. How do you really look at what's happening with the UGC draft rules? Is it all politics? Is it all mayhem, or is it something far more worrying?
No, I think it's very worrying, actually, because UGC is a regulatory body and it keeps on coming up with lots of rules and regulations. And why it is so worrisome about this particular draft regulation is because, you know, this draft regulation violates the state, some of the state acts. Now, one will have to understand that, you know, a regulatory body, which is not a ministry, is coming out of rules with penal provisions and these rules violate the State Universities Act. Now, State Universities Act are legislatively, they are passed by the legislature, right? And there's certain sense of accountability over there. But UGC doesn't have any sense of accountability in terms of rules and regulations which they come up with. But the point that they have made, in this draft regulation is actually very draconian. Says that it is actually leading towards privatization, right? They want a complete control over the appointments of the vice-chancellor. Then they want a complete control over the board of management, and they have said it very clearly that in the board of management we can keep businessmen, no qualms about it. Vice-chancellor, non-academic, supposedly, of course, because the manner in which the government is focusing on business, right? So you have a businessman sitting as a vice-chancellor, and then not only that, then university will run on loans. You must have heard about this, that they have formed, now to run university, you have to take loans from the government, and I don't know what will happen to the salaries of the teachers, salaries of the employees, who's going to pay. Definitely, I think the price, the fees is going to go very high. So these are at the backdrop of NEP. So if you read it very carefully between the lines, all these provisions are there, which is what I call it as privatization by stealth, right? A, and B, these rules completely violate federal principles, because federalism is based on state autonomy on the one hand and some sort of a shared rule. So state autonomy is
Mr. Tanvir, if you're saying it's privatization by stealth, and if it is circumventing the federal principle of the country, is that all it is? It doesn't dilute the academic provisions of a university. That's not a concern.
No. See, my concern is that if you have a vice-chancellor who is not academic, right? Okay. Now, of course, and supposedly if the to my understanding, if the vice-chancellor is a businessman, right? Which they can have, right? So therefore, or somebody from outside, not from academic, from outside. We have had very bad experience of major generals, sitting as vice-chancellor, bureaucrats sitting as vice-chancellor. They were knowing nothing about the syllabus, what needs to be taught, and how the syllabus curriculum. So in the long run, the standards get diluted. So that is the question, right?
Do we have Mr. Rajesh Jasyal with us at this point? All right. Can we very quickly go across to GS Prashant? GS Prashant, you're representing the BJP. You are a BJP spokesperson. In fact, a lot of states from the south, including Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Telangana, all of them have gone ahead and, in fact, passed a resolution unanimously across the state political geographical borders and saying, take back these draft UGC resolutions. You've heard an academician. We're going to get an academician to counter him as well. But as somebody who's seeing these massive protests, how do you respond to the concerns of diluting the existing academic setup in the country?
Sneha, firstly, what this Congress and its allies are trying to do is only nothing but politicize the issue. And they are doing it. And the states you mentioned, who? Karnataka, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, Jharkhand, all the 6 states where BJP is not in power. So basically, to take on BJP, because they've not been able to find any issues to counter BJP, they pick and choose these things and bring in this conflict of governor versus state and trying to make issues out of that. And you look at it, Congress was in power for so many decades, and by convention, governors were chancellors. Suddenly, they've realized that they're out of power for now 10 plus 5, 15, probably 15 more years. They're realizing that they may never come back to power. Therefore, they want to have some power with them. This is nothing but a political gimmick by this Congress and its allies. Nothing more, nothing less. Because when you talk about funding...
Okay, Mr. Prashant, here's the thing. We will come to the politics of it. I will get the Congress to respond to you as well. But you just heard an academician speak, and you are saying there are no issues. The academician has raised certain issues, including attempts to privatize through backdoor, of just diluting the academic status of universities. How do you respond to that? You are saying there are no issues. You've just heard an academician. We'll get to the politics, but do you want to respond to this?
No, Sneha, you look at it from the point of view. It's not that the academician will not be at the helm at all. If the draft guidelines are mentioning that people of repute with intellect, with suitable qualifications, may not be to that particular extent to say, they're not saying that somebody who's college dropout will now decide the future of the students in the university. Definitely not. It is definitely a person who's got intellectual ability to do the job which has been assigned. Here, Congress and its allies have a problem. And now you look at the objective behind UGC also, coordination and standardization, promotion of university education, allocation of funds, advisory role, basically advising both the union and the state governments for allocation for general or specific purposes in higher education, information collection, regulation on fees. So UGC goes beyond merely appointing somebody. It is probably a nodal body which is looking at how the university will function.
Mr. Prashant, you really can't say that the saving grace is that a non-educated person is not going to be appointed as a vice-chancellor of a university. That really can't be the saving grace of not being mentioned in draft rules. But before I go over to the academician again, let me very quickly get in A. Saravanan, DMK for that matter, the Tamil Nadu government has been very strongly protesting against these draft rules. In fact, the protests that happened in the national capital were also spearheaded by them. MK Stalin, for that matter, has written to all opposition rule states. What's irking you all so much?
Thanks to the BJP spokesperson, he clearly mentioned what are all the functions and duties of the UGC. Where does it state that the UGC has got the power to usurp the rights of the state governments? The state governments have invested so much on building a state university. We want our people, we want our nominees to become the vice-chancellors. Being a vice-chancellor is not an easy joke. They shape up everything. So we want people who are aligned with the best interest of the state to be made as a vice-chancellor. We don't want those posts to be given as some this thing to an RSS pracharak. That is what is happening now.
Why bring in RSS? Mr. Saravanan,
Sir, I was listening to you.
When you talk about nominees, what is that you're talking about?
Listen, we know what is happening.
What is the nominees you're talking about? Mr. Saravanan,
we know what is happening.
We know the objective of DMK.
We don't want
know the
Okay,
objective of
Mr. Prashant, I'll come back to you. Mr. Prashant, I'll come back to you. I heard you out. Allow Mr. Saravanan to make his point. I'll get right back to you. You will have the right to respond. Go ahead, Mr. Saravanan.
Yes. See, so what does this UGC regulation say? It wants to take away the right of the union government, right of the state government to appoint vice-chancellors. They say they will bring, that is yet another issue we have a problem with, appointing non-academicians. This is the main issue. We are fighting this. We are fighting this in the Supreme Court. The governor has not given assent to our bills. When, especially in a federal setup, what happens if you are ruled by your ally? You are giving them everything. You are not allowing the governor to step out of his bounds. Imagine an opposition ruled state being targeted through the thing of the UGC. What is the idea of the RSS? The idea of the RSS is to deny access to education. And they are excellently doing this by this UGC draft regulation. He is saying, we are not doing any...
Mr. Saravanan, before I go back to Mr. Prashant, I have a question. I have a question to which I'll give you exactly one answer. Mr. Prashant, I'll come to you. Let me just ask one question to Mr. Saravanan. I mean, I'm not defending the UGC draft rules by all means. Surely you have the right to oppose. You're saying the states are being circumvented. Fair enough. You have your points. But I have a question to ask. Where's the accountability? Because it's not as if appointments right now, even with the draft rules not there, are all hunky-dory and fair. There's dilution to appointments and posts across universities even now.
See, exactly. So, just because there were some allegations that the state governments have not made good appointments, the union government will do. As though union government is something which has jumped from heaven. It is also the same corrupt government which is there. They are also appointing only corrupt vice-chancellors. It is about the right of the
one
state.
Point to be noted.
This is not about what is happening here
Mr.
or what
Prashant,
is not happening there. In Gujarat, vice-chancellors are mired in corruption. In every other state, this is happening. This is an endemic problem. Can you cite that and say, no, state government should not have the right
Mr.
to appoint
Prashant, go ahead,
vice-chancellors.
respond.
Only the
A minute
union
to you.
government should
No,
appoint.
Sneha,
That cannot
now,
be the answer.
the DMK has categorically agreed that they indulge in corruption, which is why when you ask about where the government has come from, it has come from the heaven of the people who have blessed PM Modi's leadership for the third consecutive time.
That is why you
And
got only
will
240. You
no,
lost
no.
this election. You are a
DMK,
minority government. You are running
No,
the
Sarvana,
government at the mercy
Sir,
of...
Mr. Standing by that means has also come from heaven by the votes of the people only, sir. So let's leave that. But please go ahead.
You are not a majority
interfere.
government. You are a
Now he
minority
cannot
government.
interfere.
You are a
No,
minority
Okay,
government.
allow Mr. Prashant to speak. Both
Sneha,
of you
this is-
are
see, this
absolutely
is-
incomprehensible. So if you want to be understood by the viewers, Prashant, please speak.
Let me complete without being disturbed by DMK, because they have to know basic mathematics that a party, NDA as an alliance, has got more than 280 seats, and therefore we are in power and we have not lost. Congress and its allies have not even crossed BJP's 240
Sir,
seats.
what are you doing, sir? Mr. Prashant, we are having such a crucial debate and you're talking about numbers the whole country knows. Okay, let me very quickly get in two more panelists. Let me welcome them at least at this point. Rajesh Jasial.
Sneha, there's one more point which I have to make. Give me 30 seconds.
Okay,
This is
Mr.
about
Prashant, continue with your point.
bringing
But here's the point. You'll have to
for
stick
every
to the point of
debate
the
here.
debate.
This cannot
Don't
be
get into the mandate and votes and everything. Everybody knows you're wasting precious airtime. Please finish the point. Make the counter.
Why are you bringing in RSS for everything?
Because
On what basis is DMK having RSS? Why?
RSS is the only
You are-
organization which
no,
is
no, no.
controlling BJP.
As
I
DMK,
All right.
you are-
Okay.
No, no.
I'm just interrupting at this point. Advocate APS Khadial, good evening. Thank you for joining us. And Mr. Rajesh Jasial, thank you very much for joining us. In fact, let me just get in Mr. Rajesh Jasial and Professor Tanvir Aeijaz. This is between the two of you, the two academicians who should be able to tell this country what's wrong, what's right. You were not there earlier, Mr. Rajesh Jasial, but Mr. Tanvir, Professor Tanvir made it very clear. He's alleging that the new draft UGC rules has three agendas. One is getting in privatization by stealth through the back door. Two, he's alleging it's diluting the academic preferences and the merit that should be given to various posts, including the vice-chancellor's post for that matter. Allowing non-academicians also to be appointed is largely his core arguments. Of course, the federal principles being circumvented. So, Mr. Rajesh Jasial, let's hear you on this.
Okay. Good evening to everybody. My apologies that I could join later because of certain technical glitches on my end. Right. I belong to no party. I am equally friendly with BJP, equally friendly with Congress. But as an academician,
That's why you're here, sir. That's why you and Professor Tanvir are here. But go ahead.
Yeah, it may not. It is not to support any particular party. My only point is that if supposing our system till date had gone off so well, with all these years of 70 years or 75 years of existence of our country, and we have now approximately 1,150 universities in India, where do we stand globally? Nowhere. And that is something, a soul searching is required, both at the federal level, both at the central level. And now, since center has come with the proposal to draw out merit of this country, which purely may not be academic. Please understand, university is a universe. University is not pure pedagogy. University is not that you just hold classes, give degrees, give certificates, and ask the people to go find a job. I'm sorry, the world has changed. You look around the top universities, 100 universities across the world. Who is heading them? Is it a very top academician? Or is it a scientist? Is it an industrialist? Is it a person of great eminence who has done great amount of social service? You will get your answers. And the UGC today, or I'll say the government is trying out this experiment, and we should welcome it with open arms. And rather than being stuck to only our states, what will the Biharis get, what will the Punjabis get, what is the Kannadiga going to get, what is the Tamils going to get in DMK government. That's not the issue here. Issue is whoever is most suitable to head a university in which what kind of students, what kind of a product we are trying to shape, that is more important. And that is where the universities must
Okay, let me
spread
get
out
in, Professor.
their wings.
Sir, allow me. Let me get in Professor Tanvir Aeijaz to respond to this particular point that you're making. Fair point. He's making a point that it's not just marks, it's not just academics that should be the ruling point for a university, the governing point for a university. There could be many high-stake owners from across the sectors.
Yeah, so that's precisely the reason why I think we need to have an academic vice-chancellor, because the academic would be able to understand what are the other things, other inputs which goes into the university. Imagine for a moment that you have AIIMS as an institution, where you have research, where you have, classes, and of course you have practice as well, both. Can you imagine AIIMS being run by a businessman? You can't imagine, right? And nowhere in the world, perhaps, you're seeing everywhere. I think you should do a mapping, or you should do some searching for this, that how many in US universities the heads are, or they call it as chancellor or whatever, or the presidents, they are non-academic. It's a major debate in US as well. But the point here is not about who is going to come as a vice chancellor. The real point is to give powers to governor. Nobody has talked about the search committee. The 3-member search committee that UGC has talked about, and in the 3-member search committee, the governor would be heading. And let me tell you, governor of West Bengal, governor of Tamil Nadu, governor of Kerala, all these governors for so many months did not appoint vice-chancellor for many universities.
Okay,
so can you imagine?
Come to the search point, that's important. I want you to come back because I want to get Mr. Jasyal on that.
But you need to focus on the role of the governor. Over the past, let's say, 6-7 years, West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, the governor, they were sitting on the bills for the appointment of vice-chancellor, and the university were running without vice-chancellor for more than 1 year,
so
2 years. So
that's why UGC is saying that we are bringing in draft laws.
So why? Because if the governor is doing all the misdemeanor, so why you should have governor? And the other very important point is that the State Universities Act, they say that we give 90% of the funds. State universities are funded by state. So why they shouldn't have a control over their own taxpayers' money? Right, that is the question.
Mr. Jasyal, come into this.
Yes.
Respond to what Professor
No.
Tanvir has said before I go to the other panelists as well.
True.
2 points here. Let me just also mention this to our viewers. There's also going to be a reform which has been proposed in the search committees, or the appointing committees, as it were, to get to...
Yeah, so 3-member, and all the 3 members would be directly, they would be controlled by the center.
Governor and the UGC. So basically...
Governor and the UGC chairman's nominee and the previous vice-chancellor, which is all the 3
Mr.
members would be controlled by the center.
So basically state has no role when funding comes from the state.
State would have no role
I'm
to
sure.
play.
I want to make a point to my fellow panelist, eminent professor, that I don't think the government is going to appoint a businessman over AIIMS as a vice-chancellor. Technically, possibility exists. I agree with you. But I'm sure that no government in the center would ever take such a step. You take a sports university. Why should some very eminent sports person should head that university? Do you want an academician to head it? That is where I think the government is trying to bring in some changes. And that is why it is slow and steady. It is going to happen. But yes, the fight between the state and the government and the politicians will continue. This will continue. There will be no satisfied or satisfying solution to this problem. But I am convinced of one fact, that as long as the merit counts, and that merit certainly does not come with only degrees, as long as the merit counts and that merit is adequately selected by the selection committee, you can have a person from any field heading your university today. Because university is I am
Well,
again
that's it. I think both of you interpreting it the
academic.
way it is a very interesting interpretation. But let me just get in Advocate Khadial at this point. Advocate Khadial, here's the question, and the previous panelist spokesperson from BJP alleged this, that Congress, under the Congress, it was the same system for such a long time. They really had no problem with the governor as a chancellor whatsoever to continue with the proceedings. Why are they creating this hullabaloo suddenly?
Well, see, number one, we have also had IT, ED, CBI back in the day when the Congress party was in power. But the way that these agencies are being used now, there's a very big difference.
CBI was a case pilot when Congress was in power. Thank you, Mr. Kadial.
Would you please keep quiet?
I have to correct you on facts.
Yeah, if you would please
in 2013, when Congress was in power,
yeah,
Supreme Court called the CBI.
Does the Bharatiya Janata Party have
Mr. Prashant, I will come to you, Mr. Prashant. You will get your time to speak, but if you do not allow a panelist to speak, how will you be heard? I believe your whole point of speaking is to be heard, which you will be given the chance to. So go ahead, Mr. Advocate Khadial.
Exactly. So what I was saying was that back in the day, or I'll give you an even better example. A doctor uses a knife and a scissor to treat patients, and a criminal uses it to hurt the people. So, there's a difference between how you use it. So that's one. Number two, the Bharatiya Janata Party is accustomed to undermining the federal structure, is accustomed to undermining the constitution, the democracy, and the states. Do they not know what the constitution says? India is a union of states. And why do you want to be undermining languages, traditions, cultures? There is Article 14 in the constitution, which is equality. And number two, I want to tell them,
but education is in the concurrent list. So with the state as well as the center.
So it's not about the concurrent. It's about if you are bringing about such a big reform, ought you not consider the states? I mean, back in the day also, when the farm laws were brought, on which they made a U-turn, 360-degree U-turn, wasted a year of the farmers, they took it back because they did not consult the farmers. Now, again, they're not wanting to consult the states. They're not wanting to involve them. They're not wanting to ask them. They're simply wanting to impose it, shove it down their throats, and then consider themselves better. The point here is...
Mr. Prashant, fair point. Get the states, involve them in dialogue, have a conversation with them, get them into the selection committees. Why shut them off? Fair point.
Exactly. Number one, 6 states have already passed a resolution which says that the draft UGC regulations, are basically trying to do away with the role of the state governments in the appointment of the vice-chancellors, number one. Number two, the way they have tried to do away with the academic performance indicator, and by doing this, they're basically trying to bring in a lot of discretion so that whoever the Bharatiya Janata Party likes, whoever the BJP government wants, could be put there into that place. And they do not even have to have to go through the procedure, the process, which is proven to be very comprehensive and very competent and very meritorious. And number two, the resolution also says that the provisions related to...
Let me get in, Mr. Prashant. Mr. Prashant, go ahead, please respond.
Firstly, to bring in RSS for everything to say RSS is dictating is blatantly wrong because the central government is empowered to bring in this law. Mr. Kadial, now...
Mr. Kadial, allow Mr. Prashant to respond. I have to give both of you equal time. We are short on time. Mr. Kadial, allow Mr. Prashant to respond.
So this ploy by the Congress and its allies to say that they have passed a resolution, this resolution is not legally binding on anybody. It's just that a group of opposition rule states coming together saying, look, who's calling these states because this is the same Congress government.
Just tell us one thing.
When the thief has been caught with the booty, Mr. Kadial, wait. When Mr. Sidramaya here is giving equation to say like it's like a thief running away with booty, when caught, he's returning the sites. This is a Congress action to say, look, when we were there, we will appoint the governors and government will be chancellors. Now that we will never come back to power here, we want to now take it away. And the DMK's position has always been to divide the country on language, divide the country between South and North India, which is what DMK was speaking about. And they were talking about their taxes only going to them. They don't understand.
Mr. Prashant, I just want to remind you again, you are not talking about the issue we are discussing. You're getting into political rhetoric. I just want to sound you up about this.
Sneha, can I come in? Sneha, can I come in?
Just a minute. I want to give him another chance, Mr. Saravanan. Allow me to give another chance to Mr. Prashant to make his point about the debate that we are discussing. Political rhetoric will go on, but we are trying to focus on an issue. So, Mr. Prashant, please go ahead.
Exactly. See, we have never shied away from the rules and the regulations and the law of the land. So therefore, to say that I completely agree with Professor Aeijaz to say that any person of repute who will have the position and the qualifications to head will be made the vice-chancellor, because in today's world, it is not merely about you by hearting certain chapters and letting it out. It is more to do with the overall skill sets, which is what NEP is also talking about. You need to be well groomed as an individual in all these spheres, which is why equal importance is given to sports also, education
but
also.
an academician can also be well groomed.
So
and if I can put in to Mr. Jaiswal and others as well who have made this argument, here's the whole question of accountability vis-a-vis a moral high ground that the government will not do, but that's not how democracy works. There's always accountability at play. Saravanan, you wanted to say something, go ahead.
Yeah, see, with regard to this UGC draft, we don't have issue just with this the vice-chancellor's appointment. We have issues with a slew of other regulations too. Most importantly, they want to push in this entrance examination model. We are against it. We don't want entrance examinations. If we are going to rely on entrance examinations for admissions, why do we need to study at all? If this emphasis is going to be placed on entrance examinations, the schools will lose focus on trying to give children an education.
Sir, because our standards are so low, sir.
For entrance examination.
You may have your graduation and you may have your board exams and whatsoever, and still you may have zero understanding of any concept, sir. I'm not a politician, but I have an answer for that, sir.
Sneha, they're saying they want to build colleges, they want to collect capitation fees, therefore they don't want any regulations and students coming through. They want to build their own school. Okay.
You made that corruption legal by bringing in
Okay, Mr. Saravanan, I give you 40 seconds. Make your point. I want to go for the last remarks to both the academicians again. Mr. Saravanan, 40 seconds. 40 seconds. Go ahead, make your point.
Yeah.
See, Sneha, is it to me? Sneha, DMK is
Mr. Saravanan, you were making a point before I interrupted you, so finish. 30 seconds.
Sneha, DMK is making a statement that they don't want any of these entrance examinations because they want to run it as their fiefdom to say they will build some colleges, collect capitation fees, and therefore play with the students'
Okay,
future.
Mr. Saravanan, respond to that very quickly. Very quickly. I have 3 minutes and I want to go to the academicians. Mr. Saravanan, respond. 30 seconds.
They have made this entire corruption legal. That is the USP of the BJP. Now, a medical seat after NEET examination, they charge around 30 to 35 lakhs. It has become unaffordable to anybody. If you don't get a government seat, common man.
All right. Okay. Now let me very quickly get in Rajesh Jaiswal as well as Professor Tanvir Aeijaz. I have exactly 2.5 minutes left. I have to get both of these in. Here's my question to both of you, a minute each to both of you. Is it concerning to either of you or is it not the fact that anybody who has a specialization but does not a specialization in their core competency can go ahead and teach in higher secondaries? Mr. Tanvir Aeijaz.
Yeah, so, I mean, see, they have come up with this whole concept of professors of practice. Right, now...
A minute and a half.
Okay, so therefore, you know, when you come up with a professor of practice, disciplines like philosophy, disciplines like English, discipline like political science, you know, who are you trying to get people in, right? That's the question. What does professor of practice mean? So I'm not getting into this whole question of specialization or non-specialization of vice-chancellor. The question here is about federalism. It's a constitutional issue that needs to be seen carefully. You know, state must have an autonomy. They have made a law. They are funding the universities. They must have the right to have their own vice-chancellor. Right?
Okay.
And here, the whole control goes to the center. So that is the question, right?
Okay. Mr. Rajesh Jaiswal, do you want to respond to what I asked?
Yeah. I again go back to the same thing. I personally feel that when a person is evolved, okay, like a professor of practice, I call him as an evolved person, he will have a lot of skills, competencies, which may not belong to the original subject which you studied. For example, I never studied artificial intelligence all my career. I spent 23 years in the army and I've spent almost equal time in the academic sector. But I appear on shows talking about artificial intelligence. Now, where does that knowledge come from? Nobody taught me that. So it's my own research. It is my own effort. If a person of this kind can
no
also
use of university
have
then.
the
You know, if
similar
you have
kind
your
of
own
knowledge,
research, your own ways of getting degree, knowledge. So
it's not
university is a
degree.
site
I'm
where
not talking
knowledge
about
is
degree.
achieved, right?
I'm not talking about degree because with your logic, I should never be able to, let's say, do an master's in artificial intelligence because I'm a humanities student. I cannot get it because that is the older system, professor, and we are going into the new century. I mean, we already spent one quarter following the
Okay,
same.
all right. I'm totally out of time. I'm totally out of time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm totally out of time. This has been a great conversation and great perspectives here. I think one thing everybody would ask is why can't the makeover, if that's the word to use, really be done with states as party to it? I think that's a legit question. And of course, the merit over what the proposals are is also up for discussion. People and their feedbacks are also welcome. People are quite split and divided in extremes over it. So thank you very much to our panelists, G.S. Prashant, A. Sarvanan, Advocate A.P.S. Kharyal. Thank you very much. Mr. Kharyal, sorry you joined us a little late. We couldn't come to you for a third round. Rajesh Jaiswal, as well as Professor Tanvir Aeijaz. Thank you very much for your time and for your expertise. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.